morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon where you are viewing this webinar. This is Bob Vogel with Mark Kroll. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Autotask, and Mark is the Executive Director of Business and Community Development. Mark is here with us to talk to us a little bit about the Zenith to Autotask integration. And Mark's uniquely able to talk to us about that because in his former life, he's with a IT services company that used both products and used them together. So, Mark, why don't you give us a little bit of a rundown of the integration, how does it work, and how guys can use it to run their business more efficiently and make things happen?
Well, thank you, Bob. I appreciate the opportunity to do so. I am excited about this integration. I'm excited about it for what it's going to do for a lot of your businesses out there that are listening, and because it did the same thing for mine. If you're currently a Zenith and Autotask customer, then you know that you are probably working out of two separate ticket queues. We want to make that come to an end very quickly. And on top of integrating the ticket queues, we're going to integrate the assets that Zenith can detect into Autotask and do that through a fairly intuitive wizard that impressed me very much the first time. So I'm going to give you a quick demo of that, and then we'll summarize at the end. And Bob, if you have any questions about this, if I kind of glance over something, feel free to stop me. For everybody on the call, this may seem a little obvious. Things may seem a little simplistic, and that's because they are. It looks like somebody took the time to make this simple and effective. So let's take a look at it. Let's start with a quick overview of the integration workflow. Basically, up in the top left, you have your Zenith remote monitoring system out there monitoring servers, desktops, other network assets. And we'll use the term assets in Autotask. That's interchangeable or synonymous with products, installed products. But we're going to use the term assets, such as asset configuration, when we talk about the asset configuration management. Your assets information and your alerts both come over from Zenith through our open API straight into Autotask. From there, you can assign them either out to the Zenith NOC or back to or down to a technician, and then, of course, it flows back into Autotask as it's worked on by, say, a remote service through OnForce or IM On Site or any other third-party subcontractor you're working with, your own technicians or Zenith. And, of course, the beautiful thing is as you go down, it matches up here against your reoccurring services contract for profitability of contracts and flows into your billing and reporting. In other words, you get paid. Now, if you're currently using integration and you have the emails coming in, this is an actual ticket created for a hard page fault on an Exchange database for a server. Not exactly what you want to see. For you techies out there, you know that means there's an inconsistency in the checksum, and you need to get that resolved through a consistency check and a defrag. That's a very time-consuming process for you non-techies. In the past, this would have come in via email. You would have gone into Autotask, maybe pasted it in there, or used the Outlook extension and inserted this into a ticket, added in your default information, and then when it was done, remember to go back to Zenith and close the ticket. You don't have to do that anymore. What happens is the tickets, well, they disappear from Zenith. This is Tech Care Team's actual Zenith interface that says, hey, your tickets aren't here anymore. Go to Autotask. So you go to Autotask, and there's that ticket in Autotask. As you notice, we've called out the source of the ticket was Zenith. You may want to apply some workflow for the defaults of the tickets that when the source equals Zenith and type equals this, maybe you set it for a particular estimated response in hours or an escalation process, up to you how you want to use the workflow, but here we set it for 6 hours with an SLA already attached to it because it's associated with an asset, and you'll see that later.
I can see that on some of these screens you've taken some of the personal and kind of sensitive information and blocked it out, right?
That is correct. This is from an actual database for Tech Care Team down in Charlotte, the company that I used to own there.
Good. Thanks for that.
Sure. Here's an example of the user-defined fields that are, one of the new user-defined fields is in here for the ticket ID owner. So whoever the ticket's assigned to is who has the ball, kind of like presenting on a webinar or on a conference call. In this case, the ball's being passed to the NOC. So the NOC sent a ticket, or the Zenith Alert sent a ticket to Autotask, and of course, Tech Care Team noticed that ticket and says, you know what, let's let the NOC work on this. Defragging an Exchange database is a very long process, especially for that particular server. I do remember the instance. So they assigned it back to the NOC, and Zenith would go ahead and work on it and add some notes in it. And this is what I really, really like. This is an actual ticket And if you look, you see what time that, Bob, you notice what time that Zenith worked on this ticket?
Where can I find that?
3:57 in the morning. Yeah, right on the top.
Yeah, it looks like 3:57 a.m.
While I was sleeping, the Zenith NOC, for the fixed price that I paid him that month, a very nominal fee, had gone and worked on an Exchange server, running the defrag and running the consistency check, and then remounting the database. And you can see they documented thoroughly everything they did, put it in the ticket notes, and these ticket notes could actually be passed on to the customer as if I had worked on the ticket myself while I was sleeping. I know the time on this took about 6 hours. Cost me the same either way. So that's
now, did you have to actually always automatically push those tickets up to Zenith? I mean, do you have to be around to do that, or can you have it set up that certain tickets you want to go just going right to the NOC so you don't have to have that step in the middle?
It really depends on how you want to set up your workflow configuration. So the short answer is yes, depending on how you set it up. It's all about how your SLA is, making sure that you have a contract for that. Obviously, if it was a billable issue, I wouldn't want to just push it back to Zenith and then have the customer turn around and say, well, I wasn't willing to pay for that when I go to bill them later. So it depends on your workflow.
Got it. Thanks.
So Zenith updates the resolution notes on the ticket. In their ticketing system, that passes back to Autotask. How that's set up, and yes, it was that easy. How it's set up is I go into my configuration. Once I've contacted Autotask Client Services, they'll enable the Zenith integration. And from here, I'll enable round-trip ticket updates by matching up my statuses. I match up my statuses with their statuses. So my definition of closed may be their definition of something else, or when they close a ticket, I want to put it into a send survey or a QA status and not just automatically close it. But the main point of this is showing that we do round-trip ticket closure through the mapping of statuses.
And that's configurable.
That is configurable. Now, shifting gears into the assets, tickets are now associated with assets, and assets are associated with contracts, all of which are associated with a customer. So the first thing we do is we run the device discovery wizard, and you have it set up for what intervals you want it to run on and to notify you that there's new devices either detected or missing and on what frequency. In this case, we ran the device discovery wizard. I've had to hide the names. Obviously, these are customer names. And you see that there's one open box in the middle where there was a customer name that didn't match up. Now, the mapping is site to account. So in Zenith, you have a site. In Autotask, you have an account. If you have child accounts, you'll need separate sites in Zenith for that. This is a question I get a lot. So how you set that up, that's really up to you. But you want to make sure that you have a separate site per account in Autotask. If you're not set up that way, don't start your mapping. Don't start your integration until you figure out how you're going to tackle that one. Once you match the sites up, it's going to show you all the devices or assets that it's discovered. So as it goes through, it says, well, I found these two devices right here. We haven't mapped before. They're new. What do you want me to do? Now, if you've already got assets or products into Autotask, you don't have to worry about creating duplicates, because here you can actually mash the information together to avoid duplicates. So you can do a merge, so to speak. And you'd select basically what the asset name is. We've used a very simplistic naming scheme. You might actually have model numbers or product names in there, like if it were a Sonic Wall, it'd be a Sonic Wall TZ180 or TZ190, et cetera, or a Dell server, Dimension 2100 or something. We've made it simple with server, desktop, laptop, because we didn't need that level of complexity.
So this is something that you just do every time that you sync up and they find something that's new?
Yep, it'll notify you. Autotask has a workflow that'll notify you that there's new discoveries, and you know to go into the CRM and run the device discovery wizard at that point. Now, of course, you can map.
If there's nothing new, then it just does its thing.
That's correct. So the next thing you do is you want to associate your assets, the new ones, with the product type. For those of you that don't know what a product type is, it is a template for adding custom configuration in the configuration management. One of the greatest things Autotask has added in the past year is the ability to create a template for what information you want to store for particular types of products. So Sonic Walls and Cisco's are all firewalls, and you would want to have certain types of information stored to those devices that wouldn't be the same as you would for a server or a workstation or a printer. So you can create different templates that ask you for different custom or user-defined fields. This is where you'd specify that. Now, it's pretty intuitive, because when you select one particular drop-down for one template or one product type, it automatically says, hey, I found 3 other devices that were just like this. Do you want to apply the same product type to it? So there's some smart logic built into this wizard that impressed me. as it ran through. And you'll see an example of that later in the contract merging.